From allergies to zinc deficiencies, hangry to hay fever, we provide easy-to-absorb information to improve your health. It sounds like health on Texas A&M Health Talk. Howdy, everybody. Welcome to Sounds Like Health. My name is Mary Lee Meyer.
And I'm our co-host, Sam Kraft.
And we're here with Dr. Sharon Dormeyer. She's with us from the Texas A&M College of Nursing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's good to be here.
And it's good to have you. You are our resident menopause researcher. You've had a lot of grants and done a lot of work with menopause, so that's what we're going to talk about today.
I'm interested and intrigued by this topic because I'm obviously a male and do not have... I do have hot flashes to an extent, but not like in normal menopause ways, I guess.
Well, and it's going to be an interesting one because it's not something that a lot of people speak about. I feel like there's almost a stigma around it, but it's less of a stigma about menopause, but more of a stigma about aging and getting older.
I think a lot of people just assume, and me being a man, I also just assume that menopause only happens to older women. Like it's for lack of a better term, like a rite of passage in womanhood or some stupid thing like that. So it'd be interesting to hear what really the medical aspect of it is today.
Okay. Well, menopause is somewhat of a newer phenomenon in our society because, like in the 1800s, women lived to the late 30s, early 40s. But ovarian function continues till 35, between 35 and 52, basically. That's when menopause typically occurs. So it's a later in life phenomenon. When the life expectancy wasn't long, women didn't have menopause. Now, there's lots of people through history who lived longer than that, that's for sure. So don't want to say everyone didn't make it, but the average life expectancy. But eggs and the whole menstrual cycle are set up to be kind of finite. It works until approximately age 35, and from then on in, it starts declining significantly. And what happens as it's declining, the whole menstrual cycle is a brain function piece, and the brain releases hormones to say, I need an ovary to get mature, release an egg, get ready for fertilization.
We've done this for so long. What's happening?
Yeah, what's wrong? And when it's not responding, it's not getting the feedback from the menstrual cycle, it keeps putting out more. And this whole imbalance of the hormones happens. So one of the first signs when you're getting close to menopause is actually heavy bleeding, because of the hormone imbalance. And some women struggle tremendously with trying to control their menstrual bleeding. And it becomes irregular as well, may or may not be ovulatory. A lot of times you have babies born in that time and twinning, because the ovaries are pumping out. And so when you have someone who's in their late 30s and had twins, it's physiological.
Oh, wow.
I know. What a surprise. I thought I was menopausal. The irregularity lengthens, and you just start having periods. You're not sure what's going on. And there's some other things that show up like irritability, but that's hormone imbalance. But what defines menopause is 1 full year without a menstrual period. So once you reach that, it's a retrospective thing. You say, I was menopausal at age 52 when you're 53 and you haven't had a period for a year.
So what about, and this again, me being a male, this is my concern as far as my household goes. What are emotions like in this time of hormones going crazy? Are we is it always like with some women are just standard baseline level? Do some get angrier or emotional? Maybe emotional is a better word.
Emotional is probably a good word, and it's not everyone, because everyone reacts to their hormones differently. If I could use my mom as a model, she's no longer alive, so I think I can say what she was like. But when she was going through this, she would be laughing and crying at the same time. She would, having both emotions going on.
Been there.
Cry about she'd be crying about something, but then start to laugh, or she'd be laughing and start to cry. But it really is mostly some irritability more than anything, which a lot of women relate to premenstrual wise anyway. Mm-hmm. So it's just that hormone piece that they feel.
Is there a big difference in those emotions from, the PMS, premenstrual emotions, feelings, and this menopausal emotional change, or are they somewhat similar?
Pretty much similar. Pretty similar. I think that Women who haven't had it, though, might experience that emotional challenge, and then their partner's like, what's wrong with you? You're crying over a commercial or something, it's just strange things that pop up. So it's a little different. It doesn't mean it's really real negative. It's just
different.
Strong changes in your emotions. And menopause, when you talked about age typically is pretty tight around age 52-ish, average age for women in the United States. But if a woman has problems, polycystic ovaries, maybe has a hysterectomy, if there's anything that upsets the hormone balance, she'll be menopausal early. So if she has a hysterectomy that includes her ovaries, she's menopausal even if it happens at age 29. So, and the hormones are really important actually in your cardiac health, in your cognitive health. It makes a difference to longevity.
So just not knowing, my question here, is there anything emotionally or mentally that could trigger menopause early in life, like PTSD of some sorts, or something along those lines?
No, because it's such a hormonal base piece, and
Okay.
the whole basis of it emotions affect menstrual cycle for women, but not put you into menopause.
And what about those women who are on birth controls that may make them not have a period or make them have irregular periods? How do they know? Do they still get the stereotypical menopausal symptoms of like hot flashes and all of that jazz?
That's really an excellent question, and it takes my thinking right away to some early research that was done back in the 70s, when birth control pills were first really introduced widely. They started to wonder, what are the consequences of being on the pill and not ovulating and all of those pieces. They started a study that was continues today. It was called the National Nurses Health Study. And they chose nurses as the population because nurses are pretty good at record keeping and know what medicines they're on and when their bodies have changed, and so they're good reporters. In addition, the population of nurses is pretty representative across socioeconomic groups, and so that's why they recruited young women at that time, and they started following them, and they stayed with them, which then led to menopause, and they got information about menopause and their experience with menopause. And that study found that women who started hormone therapy at menopause had better cognitive health and better cardiac health than women who did not. That led to the Women's Health Initiative, which you may or may not be familiar with. That was running during the 90s into 2002, but pieces of it continued after that. At 2002, the study was stopped because they were having, they had, I think, 8,000 in each group, nationwide, 8,000 women who had been given hormone therapy or given placebo, and the hormone therapy group had 8 more breast cancers than the placebo group out of 8,000. And they decided to stop the study. In retrospect, that was an error, and it created public health panic. People didn't have the right information. But the truth is, the issue was, in the Women's Health Initiative, the average age of women in that study was 62 to 63. They were approximately 10 years without estrogen, and so you're adding it back, and they didn't have estrogen receptors. The estrogen receptors were gone in the cell at the cellular level. So that's really the problem with that study, but yet it's one people still hearken back to. I know when I moved here 3 years ago, and when I went to my physician, my GYN physician, he wanted to talk about, well, you're still on hormone therapy, maybe we should release it. And so I told him my perspective on it, and he said, you know what you're talking about, I'm done. Because he understood, what I was saying. And so I think there's a lot more to look at, but the key seems to be that women have continuous estrogen as opposed to a long break.
What are some of the normal or most common misunderstanding or misconceptions with menopause?
Very good question. One of them is that women feel like they will start growing hair on their face They feel like their voice will change. They're fearing an increase of testosterone, really, but they're feeling they'll be more masculine because of it. And that's not the case at all. And the whole thing that you were really saying is it is, on women, it's an age discrimination piece. With men, when you see graying of the hair at the temples, you say, that's debonair. Doesn't he look handsome? And women color their hair forever. Case in point, myself, because if you're gray-haired or if you're menopausal, you're old. Nobody says you look wise. They say she looks old.
Society can be a terrible thing.
You definitely notice that looking at different celebrities.
Right.
You know, I hear all the time menopause. I think that to a man, like the most common symptom to me, besides the hormones going crazy, is hot flashes. So, like, what is a hot flash? What is happening?
What's really happening is the blood vessels everywhere, but mostly a subcutaneous open. They vasodilate or open, just like if you were doing a hard run, only you're sitting perfectly still doing something and you start this immense sweating. You can have some increased heart rate and changes in the respirations, but mostly it's the skin temperature, the sweating, the heat. I still get them, and sometimes the back, I have to pick up my hair in the back because your whole neck will be wet or your whole shirt will get wet in a very short time.
How are they brought on? Is it just a chemical thing, or can stress bring them on, or is it? And how long do they last after menopause is over?
Very good question. What brings them on? Why women have hot flashes is actually the basis of my research because it's not known. It's really not well defined. We know that it's somehow related to estrogen and the estrogen decline, but it's not an absolute relationship because only 80% of the women who are going through menopause have hot flashes. Now, those 80% are very uncomfortable, and that's generally when...
Well, I didn't realize it was just... I thought it was everybody experienced that, but everybody experiences differently.
Well, I feel like that's the most... that's the symptom that most people find difficult to manage.
It's actually what brings women to healthcare in this age group, which is... It's kind of sad. They often have their babies and then make sure the children go get care, and then when they're reaching into the menopausal age, it's the hot flashes that make them go for care, which is a good thing because it would be nice to have them getting care regularly and making sure their reproductive systems and bodies are safe. But they may not be going to anybody, so it's good to bring them in. In that respect, that's a good thing that the hot flashes are doing, but it is hot flashes that are the biggest thing.
It's like the warning sign, the biggest one everybody sees.
And the men know about it because you can wake up and half the bed is soaking wet. And,
that's wild.
And she's gone out to the couch to sleep because she had to change her clothes in her location.
Wow.
It's really heavy sweating.
Yeah, I shared a cubicle with a woman. Hi, Teresa, I love you. Who would turn her fan on all the time and then the heater. And we were just going on that roller coaster of hot to cold, and
that's bizarre.
There was not much she could
my
do about
body
it.
Just like going bipolar like that in temperature all the time.
And well, that's where my research gets very interesting because we started looking at what's the issue with blood sugar and why is it happening relevant to blood sugar. And so in my postdoctoral study, I did a really exciting study, and I brought women in the hospital, kept them fasting. One day they got glucose infusion, one day they got normal saline infusion. The women didn't know what they were getting when, and we were monitoring their blood sugar every 15 minutes and their hot flashes electronically and all of that. And the women indeed had, this was a small group study, but it was repeated measures. I think we had 12 women, and when the blood glucose was below 110, so I'm not talking hypoglycemia, I'm just talking postprandial or after you eat, they had 63 hot flashes. When I elevated their blood sugar, there were 3 total in a 4-hour time frame.
Ooh, that's correlation. Is that the right word?
Yes.
Man.
It was very, and I've done repeated studies after that. Well, now the technology's changed, and so I can let women wear monitors and live their life for 5 days and bring them back and see the data. And so it's still showing.
But I bet you get a lot better reading because then you really can't tell if it's, if it's normal situations or stressful or whatever. If the heartbeat goes up, I can correlate a lot more things to that than what you used to could.
Well, and I like that it's not experimental. It's not me doing something to them. It's in your daily life. When are your hot flashes occurring and why?
Sure.
And it is holding that when their blood sugars are lower that they're having the hot flashes. And the reason for that is glucose is transported into the brain by glucose transporter 1. That's how it gets in there. Brain doesn't store blood sugar, doesn't store fat. It has about a 2-minute supply at any moment. But when you get busy working or something, it needs to get in there faster. And what the body does is upregulates, produces more glucose transporter 1. The key is estrogen stimulates that upregulation. So estrogen makes upregulation of glucose transporter 1 and makes this whole process more efficient. Well, if I'm stressed or if I'm trying to do a presentation or whatever and I have lower estrogen level, it's not as fast at bringing the glucose in. And so the body says, well, we can beat that. Let's vasodilate the vessels and flood the brain with blood and hopefully extra glucose.
So this whole process we just talked about just now, why doesn't that happen in men?
Awesome question.
Because, I mean, we don't have the female parts, obviously, but that stuff we have, right?
Yes.
A brain, yes.
Touché.
Yes, they do.
Touché.
But the neat part, actually interesting part to me is all through life, from fetal development until a man dies, estrogen level in the brain is higher than in women. Because testosterone is changed, aromatized, whatever word works for you, changes to estradiol in the brain. So testosterone converts and your estrogen level is actually higher in the brain. Only time that men have hot flashes naturally is if they lose their testes by injury, trauma, cancer. If there's a reason that they have that withdrawal, they have hot flashes just like a woman.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And how long do hot flashes normally last? Do they, you defined menopause as no period for 12 months,
Correct.
but you can have symptoms before and you can have symptoms after. What does that timeline look at? Is menopause a moment in time, or is it
A process.
like the general life event that's happening?
It's defined as being that moment when your menstrual period stopped, but then a woman is postmenopausal after we're able to say, yes, your ovaries have completely stopped and you're not going to have any more cycles.
So is that the year process?
Yes.
Is post? Okay.
And you're post forever after that.
Okay, yeah.
But the time that your hot flashes would last is typically 2 years. So that year where you're going through menopause plus 1, 2 to 3 years. Many women last a lot longer, and there is no way to predict who's going to be longer and who's not. Some women have very few hot flashes. Some women have many.
And how long do hot flashes normally last?
Themselves, each individual flash.
Mm-hmm.
And the hot flashes can be just like 50 seconds to 5-10 minutes.
Oh, goodness.
Just depends on how uncomfortable it is. What's interesting to me in a study I conducted, I did 3 studies last summer, and I did my recruiting through Texas A&M. I just sent out to staff and faculty an invitation. I was flooded with responses. It kind of goes back to that we don't talk about the menopause much. They were so thankful. I have to say their word is thankful. They'd come in and get into the study and they'd thank me for doing this and they wanted more information. And they stayed with me through all 3 studies because they were so committed. And I just was kind of touched by that. I mean, because it says how much they're marginalized. People don't talk to them and tell them what's going on. That's kind of sad.
And I bet it's a frustrating process too, irregular periods, hot flashes here and there, and you can't really do much about it. But there are some different therapies, hormonal therapies.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. Menopause you can use natural substances, which the evidence is not really as strong as people convey. You can use certainly hormone replacement therapy. And hormone therapy, what you take is, if it depends on if you have a uterus or not. If your uterus is in place, you must take an estrogen-progesterone combination because the progesterone protects the uterus. If you don't have a uterus, you can take just estrogen. And it can be in lots of forms. It doesn't have to be a pill. Can be a vaginal cream. Can be a patch, like a smoking patch. There's lots of ways you can get it. Can be helpful. There's information also. I should be natural in this and say that there's some information that regular exercise makes a difference too, and helps people.
In what terms? As far as getting through menopause, or
treating the hot flashes?
Okay.
But to me, that's probably helping maintain your blood sugar pretty evenly.
Yeah.
And making a difference in that way.
That's true. Or you can't tell if you're in a hot flash or you're just trying to run.
Hot for running. There you go.
It's 100 degrees outside. It's every day.
Yes, I don't know that I'd want to run in today's temperatures.
No, thank you.
And you mentioned hysterectomies. My mom had a hysterectomy back in the day. Can you tell everybody what a hysterectomy is and kind of why you mentioned that in terms of menopause?
Hysterectomy is surgical removal of the uterus, usually the fallopian tubes, and sometimes the ovaries as well. If it's all of those pieces, it's called a total hysterectomy. And then if it's just sub pieces, like if you have a young woman and you don't have to take her ovaries out, you shouldn't be doing that. But if the ovaries are damaged or there's a problem or there's some reason to take them, then that's different. There's lots and lots of reasons that a woman could have a hysterectomy. Could have tumors that are bleeding excessively when the period comes. Could have endometriosis, which is very painful, over-proliferation of the lining of the uterus. You could have tumors of any kind. There's all kinds of reasons that it could happen. It doesn't all have to be abdominal, meaning a surgical incision in your abdomen. That used to be the primary way, but you can also do vaginal hysterectomies. There's lots of ways to do the surgery laparoscopically even now. So we have lots of things that are more options to us now.
And then what happens when that is removed?
Depends on the age of the woman, if you're going to do hormone therapy or not. So if it's a younger woman, you're definitely going to do hormone therapy. If it's an older woman, you might not choose to do that because she might not need that at this point. But there's a lot of practices that if the woman is younger, like less than 50, they start hormone therapy basically in the recovery room. They'll start using patch and stuff because she'll start having, the woman who has a hysterectomy and ovaries removed will start having hot flashes immediately, and they're pretty dramatic. And so hers are worse than a natural menopause. So you want to prevent that and keep her a little bit more comfortable, please. Every person's body is different.
And that's why it's so important for everyone to have these conversations with their healthcare providers, because everything's so dependent. And it sounds like these symptoms are so, I want to use the word arbitrary, but that's not the right word. They might happen, they might not happen. Sometimes they'll happen a lot, sometimes they won't happen. You might have a period, but then you might not have one for 8 months, and then you get one for the next 4 months. It sounds confusing, like a confusing process.
It is, and that's why openness and information is important. And if I can say one thing that I think women should do is to make an effort to be informed. And there's lots of good places to get such information, but one that I have to speak called North American Menopause Society, NAMS, and the access to that is easy. The website is menopause.org, and they have a plethora of good patient-focused information that is not, you don't pay for it. You can access it as a patient. And then reproductive endocrinologists also have very good information. So I recommend that you avoid social media sources and internet searches that are just random, because it's not evidence-based and people are trying to sell products most of the time instead of information so that you can make a good, healthy decision for you.
Well, I think that's a good wrapping point. Is there anything else you want to be sure our listeners know?
No, I think I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on the show, Sharon. I think I learned a lot.
Yes, a lot learned.
Good.
Hand raised.
Good. Well, that's good. And I hope it's helpful to many.
Oh, I know it is.
Awesome.
And thank you all for listening. This has been another episode of Sounds Like Health.
Thank you for joining us on Texas A&M Health Talk, a production of the Texas A&M University Health Science Center. Visit us on the web at vitalrecord.tamhsc.edu, where you'll find answers to all of your health questions. Until next time, stay healthy.